Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of YO2A Arsenal Roundup News. I'm your host, Richard Espinoza, and today we're going to be talking about the truth about the lower circuit court judges, why they rule the way that they do. I'll get that to momentarily, but first I'm going to be going over some important news as it relates to our Second Amendment rights. For those of you who live in California, in my former state of California where I used to live, California has been dealt another low blow as the attorneys for the California Rifle Pistol Association, with their general counsel, Chuck Michel, who's a great Second Amendment attorney. But once again, our magazine, the California is withholding its magazine ban, despite the fact that a little bit of a higher court in California ruled that banning magazines over 10 rounds is unconstitutional. But then again, that's California for you. Will it lead to a Supreme Court? I think eventually. But because of the Bruin decision, the gun control nuts are trying to grab on what they can in order to slow down our Second Amendment rights. And with Wyoming news, as you know, Governor Mark Gordon, the governor of Wyoming, has once again stabbed gun owners in the back. And I have this notice right here. Last year, Mark Gordon broke a written campaign promise when he vetoed HB 125 legislation to repeal the deadly gun-free zone here in Wyoming. As you all know, he rammed the same bill back through legislation, and this year, the form of HB 172, it is now into law. If you want more details on it, I encourage you to go to the Wyoming gun owners website, so that you could get more information, because I got some other things I need to talk about as it relates to the lower circuit court judges and why they rule the way that they do. One thing you got to realize about judges in general. Judges are basically lawyers in black robes. Everybody knows that. That's all judges are, lawyers in black robes. The majority of these lower court judges, whether it be in the Court of Appeals, the lower circuit courts, the majority of those judges were once attorneys representing the gun control groups, such as the Brady Campaign. They represented the Violence Policy Center. They represented the Southern Poverty League, Michael Bloomberg's Every Town for Gun Safety, or Every Town for Ungun Safety, I like to call it, because they simply want to disarm your right to protect yourself and leave you vulnerable. And of course, Moms Demand Action, another corrupt gun control group who doesn't give you facts, but only makes up things that expect you to believe that is true when it's not. They always use false facts. But the majority of these lower court judges, they either represented the Brady Campaign or any gun control group, some of whom have worked as interns, some of them worked as activists, where they worked as gun control advocates during their time in law school, or have worked as a gun control advocate for these organizations, or end up becoming their lawyers. So that's where these lower court judges come from. See, there are two types of judges. You have activist judges and you have rule of law judges. A rule of law judge is a neutral umpire, where the neutral umpire calls a ball, a strike, and a foul ball a foul ball. An activist judge is a rogue umpire where they call a strike a ball a strike, and a foul ball a home run. That is how biased these activist judges are. They're not rule of law judges. A rule of law judge goes by the Constitution and base their laws among the Constitution. And that is why we have these problems like we do today, because of activist judges. And some of these activist judges have been appointed from Bill Clinton to Barack Obama, and including Joe Biden. So these activist judges purposely rule against the Second Amendment because they're bought and paid for, because they have gotten their scholarships from these gun control groups. They've been supported their tuition from these gun control groups, so they're returning the favor back to what they promised. That's exactly what these lower court judges are. They're activist judges who don't care about the Constitution. And that's why they become judges, because they're not here to bring or withhold the law. Their job is to destroy the Constitution and the rule of law. That's what activist judges are. And that's exactly what they are doing. And this relates to some topics that was brought up from Jarrett from Guns and Gadgets, and Mark Smith, and of course John Crump. Because when you have activist judges in the courts, you're not going to go things your way. And this relates to the recent lower court of appeals on the suppressors, where a lower court argued, and if you recently watched Guns and Gadgets, Jarrett talked about the suppressors not being part of the Second Amendment, and therefore the lower court believes that the ATF has the proper authority to put restrictions on suppressors. Suppressors don't do anything except lower the sound and protect your hearing. But again, these are activist judges who will reword the Constitution the way they see fit. And that's a perfect example of an activist judge. These judges, as I mentioned, have worked for these gun control groups, both as an attorneys, both as working as interns or as activists. So that is what is going on behind the closed doors of these activist judges. They are handpicked, they are bought and paid for, and they will continue to do what they do. So in order to stay informed, I encourage all of you to tune into my show. I will try to do at least 1 or 2 videos a week because of my busy schedule, and depending on how much time I have, I'm going to try to do at least 2, maybe more. It all depends on the time I have. But to get involved, I strongly encourage for all those of you who live in Wyoming, definitely join Gun Owners of Wyoming. They are the ultimate bulldog that's fighting in Cheyenne. I also encourage you to join Gun Owners of America. They are the ultimate bulldog. They fight tooth and nail every day, and I strongly support them. And then the association, National Association for Gun Rights, and then of course the Firearm Policy and the Second Amendment Foundation. These are great organizations that I highly recommend. And as far as the NRA goes, well, I'm a little iffy with the NRA, even though I am a life member. but because of the things that's happened in the past with the NRA, I'm slowly kind of backing away. But however, I will say that Doug Hamlin, who is the new executive vice president for the NRA, I truly believe he'll do a way far better job than Wayne LaPierre, because unfortunately Wayne LaPierre has weakened the NRA. He talks a big game, but he doesn't back it. He acts like he is protecting our Second Amendment rights, and in reality he's not. He's been doing a little bit of gun control light, and if you look back to what the NRA has supported in the previous elections before Trump, what made me mad is when the NRA supported Mitt Romney, who is no friend of the Second Amendment whatsoever. But yet, Wayne LaPierre supported him, which really upset me. And that's when I kind of turned away from giving any donations to the NRA. Everybody has their differences of opinion, but the way I see it is this. All gun rights organizations shouldn't be a competition. We should be all in it together. And no matter what part of organization you're a member of, we're all in it together. And that's important to remember. We're in it together. There should be no finger pointing. There shouldn't be no fighting. We should be all on the same page. It's not about one who's better than the other. It's about joining the process and getting things done. United we stand, or divided we fall. And as Benjamin Franklin once said, either we hang together or we hang separately. And that's what we have to be. That is why we're the United States of America, because what affects one state will affect another. And just because you live in a pro-gun state doesn't mean it will stay pro-gun forever. I should know, because when I lived in California many years ago, California was a gun-friendly state. I know it sounds a little cliche, but at one time California was a pro-gun state. But what happened? And I mentioned in my previous video, the downfall was within California Governor George Deukmejian, who really destroyed our Second Amendment rights. But after Deukmejian, you didn't have anybody that was defending our Second Amendment rights. Pete Wilson was no friend of the Second Amendment, even though he was a Republican. And then after Pete Wilson, you had Gray Davis, who ended up being recalled in disgrace. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger, who definitely was rabid anti-gun, who violated our Second Amendment rights. But then again, he's married to a Democrat. Go figure. And then you had Moonbeam Jerry Brown back, and then the current idiot in Sacramento, Kim Jong-Gavin Newsom. So I lived in a time when California was a great state to live in. I lived in a time when guns weren't a problem. Heck, there was a time in California when my friends back in high school used to bring guns to school. But nobody shot anybody. We locked them in our cars. We didn't do anything. A lot of my friends, they went hunting before school, grab a deer, fill up their deer tag, or even after school, a lot of my friends would go rattlesnake hunting or target shooting. But we never shot anybody. And if we had a beef with anybody, we just used our fist. That's the way it was back then. Even our principal knew we had guns in our car. The only thing he just said as he was walking in the parking lot, lock your car up and unload your firearms. That's all he did. Until 2019, unfortunately, at Saugus High School, where that's my alma mater, where I graduated from, that was the only time a tragedy happened. But what has changed? It's because in my day, we knew how to respect authority. We respected our parents. It was always yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no pronouns. That's the way it was back then. But now things have changed because of poor parenting. And that is why it's important as gun owners, we set the right example. It's important to lead by example. By leading by example, it is important that we demonstrate safety, proper gun handling, and treat a firearm the way it should be treated. Treated it as a firearm and treat it as a weapon. Respect it as a weapon. Know the do's and do nots of handling a firearm. It all starts at home. And for those of you who are parents, remember, only you can prevent your kids from being the future school shooters. You do it by teaching them right from wrong and discipline them when you need to. And that's why we can prevent that from happening. But most importantly, we need to have our schools armed. Get armed security, armed teachers. That's the only way we can prevent school shooters from happening. Because school shooters that go into gun-free zones know that the schools are a sitting duck because they're unarmed, thanks to these gun control groups who influence these school districts to respect their wishes. And that's how it happens. Well, that is it for today for YO2A Arsenal Roundup News. This is Richard Espinoza signing off. Have a great day, fellow Americans, and please subscribe to my channel. And also take the time to please follow Guns and Gadgets, John Crump, Mark Wilson, and many other Second Amendment advocates on YouTube who will inform you on the important news that you need to know about to protect your Second Amendment rights.